Yeah, hi. Good morning to everyone. So let's start our session now. Okay. So in yesterday's session, I think we completed how to provide dynamic input from the keyboard. That is what we completed. So instead of we are taking values for variables directly inside the logic. So we are taking the values for the variables from the keyboard dynamically when we are executing the program. So how can we achieve it? How we are going to do that? That is what we taken yesterday example. One way is by using two predefined classes, scanner or buffer reader, we can take the dynamic input. So we taken scanner approach, buffer reader also same. Just only thing is class name will change. But apart from that, few other things are common. But generally people will use always scanner only. But even in real-time applications, 0% we will use scanner applications because the reason is what we will in real-time applications means it's all about web applications. We will always have a proper front end and back end. So front end is all about front end technologies, what we are using on daily basis. That is what about the things. So from there data will come always to the back end, front end to back end. So, but in our with respect to backend or core Java, when you want to make something like dynamic application point of view, dynamic input and output point of view, then it's better to go with scanner. So it will give some kind of behavior like dynamic behavior to the programming. So we can provide values dynamically instead of fixed values. We can provide different values, different times of execution by using scanner class. So that is the biggest advantage of the scanner class. So please going further also don't define variable data directly inside the logic. So always try to take data from the keyboard dynamically whenever you are executing the program. So based on that you have to write down the things. Okay. So after that I just given you an assignment which is just covering couple of concepts like instance variables, non-static methods, and probably it is covering if else conditions. So how to call one method from other method. So to cover all these topics I given this assignment. So I don't know how many of you completed your assignment, and still if you are not completed, do it. I'll give the uh, just make sure everything is working as expected. Okay. So let's come back to the next concept called as constructors. So what is a constructor in Java? What is the importance of constructors in Java? Let's try to understand. Yeah. So before entering into constructors, I'll give you the overview of constructors and the importance of constructors. So constructors is a topic, is most important topic. So I'm telling you this is the most important topic means this topic what we are learning right now. The topic what we are learning right now is going to be involved in everyday programming. In everyday programming in everyday programming with respect to real-time applications, guys. I'm telling like with respect to everyday programming in the sense it's not like what we are doing on training, I mean what we are doing on with respect to practice, it's not like that. So my point here it is the concept constructors directly or indirectly involved in everyday programming with respect to real-time applications. Okay, so real-time projects, real-time applications, whatever it is. So that means the concept of constructors, we have to be very good. Then only we can understand a lot of other things also. Even when you are going for Spring or Spring Boot also, there is the most important topic called as constructor injection. So that means to understand the Spring and Spring Boot also, you should understand how constructors are working. What is the concept of constructors? At what time we have to go for constructors? How to implement constructor? The story about constructors we should know very well. So that's right, it's a most important concept, and there is one more concept also. So many areas you will use constructors. So directly or indirectly we will use so many areas constructors are concept. So now let's see what is constructors. what is constructor? What is constructor? Yeah. So the meaning of constructor versus destructor generally in C++ language, I think, yeah, C++ only destructor. So in so in C++ language, we have a concept called as constructor, similar to like Java. Even we have a concept called as destructor also in C++ language. But in Java, we don't have destructors. Okay, we have only constructor topics. Destructor and all, we don't have any topic. So the meaning of constructor versus destructor here it is. Constructor is talking about constructing, constructing or creating an instance. So an instance is nothing but object. So the constructor topic is around creating the objects, constructing the objects, constructing the objects. So destructor with respect to C++ point of view, same thing. Destructing or okay, erasing an instance or object. So destructing the object, but we don't have destructor topic in our Java language. So we don't have it in Java language. So let's concentrate on the constructor only. So now when it comes to the constructor is all about constructing an instance of object. So what is the point of constructing an instance of object? Why we are going to use constructors while we are creating the objects, or while creating the objects, how constructors are behaving, vice versa, we have to understand. So that means there are two ways how constructors are involving in object creation. This is what we have to understand, as well as vice versa point of view also, how objects are, how object creation is involving constructors. So let's see, these are all details one by one slowly, no problem. So we will discuss one by one everything with multiple examples. The reason is most important. Okay. So first of all, with respect to Java, let me give you how what is a constructor. So overall meaning is constructing an object. The point of constructors in the sense it is the overview of constructor is constructing an objects by passing some information, whatever it is. That is what the point. With respect to object creation, the constructor concept will coming into the picture. So for example, when you have a class called as A class, and generally what we will do, we'll create object like new by using new operator. By using new operator, we are creating the objects like this. So here A is a object name, and this is the most important thing here. It is right hand side. By using new operator, what we are doing here it is we are creating object for the A class. We are creating object for the A class. So that means in the whenever we are creating an objects, constructors are coming into the picture. Point number one. So that is what we understood. Now what is a constructor here? It is a constructor similar to methods. A constructor similar to methods, or I can say like looks like method. Looks like methods. So as well as sometimes people will say like constructors are special type of methods. Constructors are special type of methods. Constructors are special type of methods. So that means when you are good with the methods topic, then you are done with the you're going to understand very easily constructors also. But there are some challenge, I mean differences that are there between different methods and constructors. We will see that. So that's why I written similar or looks like, but not exactly methods. And sometimes we can call it as constructors are a special type of methods, but not regular type of methods. So generally now the question is, what is a method? When we will use method? So method is all about a group of statements. Generally what we will say like a group of statements to do some task, to do some functionality, to achieve some functionality, to achieve some task, behavior, whatever it is, we will write some logic by taking some parameters and all, we will write some methods. So it's all about finally a group of statements to do some behave task or to achieve some functionality, whatever it is. So similar to methods only, constructors also we are going to write down, but there are some rules and regulations we are having. Constructors are special type of methods like people will call. The what are the rules we have to follow with respect to constructors? Let's see here. Point number one, a constructor name should be, because you know that, right? When it comes to method, simply I give an overview of method, right? So method will always have a name, method signature, something like that. But similar to that, a constructor name should be always class name. So what is the point I written here? It is, if you want to write a constructor inside our Java class, so and then you cannot give constructor names whatever you want. You have to give always that respective class name only. For which class you are writing the constructor, okay, for which class you are writing the constructor, inside which Java class you are writing the constructor, that Java class name, that class name only you have to give the as a constructor name. So that means a constructor name should always be the class name, should always be the class name. So that means if you return a class called as employee class, public class employee, something like that. Now if you are writing a constructor, in the sense your constructor name always your class name only. You should not give different names other than the class name. So that means the rule number one is a constructor name should be always class name. Point number one. Second thing, constructors constructors will not have any return type. So what is the point here? It is again, constructors don't have or any return type. So constructors don't have any return type. So what is the point of return type? Generally, when it comes to method, we will write like this, right? Public, okay, something access specifier and followed by whether it is a static or non-static method, we will write down that. So in case if it is a non-static method, we will not write anything, but we will always have a concept called as a return type. Return type, return type, and then followed by method name, method name, method name, and then followed by parameters, 0 or more parameters. So that means simply I can write down method parameters, and then you will open the curly braces. This is the logic you will write down. Inside this, what you will write down the logic. And then if it is void, you will not use any return statement mostly. Other than void, if you are using integer, employee, student, string, double, whatever it is, you will use always return statement. So you will always write return statements. You will always write return statements. So this is all about what, when you are understanding the methods, this is all about the concept of methods. Why we are bringing the concept of methods here? It is a constructors are similar or looks like methods, and constructors are all called as sometimes a special type of methods but not regular type of methods. Now as per my rules, what I am telling, a constructor name should always be the class name. So in this case, if you return an employee class, then your constructor name becomes employee. for example. So where to write, I will tell you. So now second rule is constructors don't have any return type. So that means however your method is having a return statement, return type here, like void, maybe integer, string, whatever you want to define as a return type, mandatorily 100% in the methods. Same way we should not do in the constructors. So first of all, constructors don't have any return type. Point number 2. Point number 3 is constructors. So when constructors don't have return type in the sense, when they don't have return type in the sense, definitely we will not use any return statement. So no return means no return statements. So that is what you have to remember. Now constructors are going to be, constructors are going to take 0 or more parameters. Similar to, that's why similar to methods. So that's why it is called as similar to methods. The reason is constructors are going to take 0 or more parameters. So when you are creating the constructors in our Java class, we will give the constructor name as class name, and we should not use any return type. And as well as constructors are also allowing 0 or more parameters. Like however, we are going to write integer a comma b or string name comma something like string email id, like whatever the parameters we are defining here. So same way we can define in the constructor level also. We can define as part of the constructors also. Okay, point number 3. And point number 4. Constructors are, okay, based on this, let's write down the syntax, then we will discuss these points. So now based on these 3 lines and when comparing with the method, can we write down the syntax? Yes. So see here, what I said guys, just let's take the method point of view, then it's very easy. So syntax point of view. So how we are going to write down the constructors is, so access specifier. So this will be called as access specifier. Okay, yes, we will have constructors also have access specifier. Okay, cool. Next, what is my rule? Constructors don't have any return types. So that means let's remove it. And I said constructor name should always be the class name. Whatever the class you are writing Java class, inside that if you are writing any constructor, then that constructor name is always class name. It's class name only. So that means now in this case, I'll write class name. Access specifier space class name followed by 0 or more parameters. Why I am writing 0 or more means, so a constructor may take parameters, may not take the parameters. Based on our requirement, we will define empty parameters, 0 parameters, or more than 1 parameter also based on the requirement point of view. So that means this is what, now whenever there is no return type, whenever you are not defined any return statement here, so then obviously there is no return statements. There is no concept of return statements. So this is called as constructor syntax. This is called as constructor syntax. So the point is no return types, class name. So in interviews also they will ask you what is the difference between method and constructors. So with respect to declaration, with respect to signature also you have to explain them. So methods will have a return type, constructors don't have the return type. Methods names we can give whatever the name we want, but constructor name should be always class name. In which class we are writing the constructor, that class name we have to provide. So like that you have to explain all these points. So but when it comes to parameters, yes, similar to methods, you can define 0 or more parameters like based on the requirement. If you want to pass some real values to the method logic, then generally you will use the parameters, right? So these are all details we discussed in the methods level. Okay. So this is how somehow we are going to write down the constructors. Fine. So if I am writing an example point of view. For example, if I am writing public class is employee class. Okay, class is employee class. So that means constructor point of view, I'm writing employee parenthesis. If it is having no parameters, you have to use parenthesis, you have to use, but no zero parameters. So then inside this, you will write down the logic. But what logic has to be written inside the constructor and what is the importance of this logic? We will discuss those details. Simply I'm writing a example. Now, for example, if I'm writing one more example, public employee, if you are having any method parameters like string, name, comma, string, whatever it is, age, whatever it is, like that, also you are going to define the parameters and you write down the logic. So this is how you can write down the constructors on high level. So the construct, if you observe here, no return statement and the class name, whatever example we taken, public class employee point of view. So the same class name we taken for the constructor name also. Now the constructor name is what? Always a class name. So here 0 parameters or more parameters based on the requirement, you will define it. Okay. So what we understood as of now, here it is. How we are going to write down the constructors, how constructors are looks like methods point of view. We understood couple of rules. Now when it comes to behavior, so as of now we understood. So okay, how we are going to deriving a definition of constructor or creating the writing the constructors definition point of view, how we are going to define the constructors in our logic. Now when it comes to the behavior, now let's understand behavior point of view. So that means how constructors are going to execute it, at what time constructors will be executed, how many times constructors are executed. These are all details we have to understand now. So this is all about just writing the constructors. Now we are understanding behavior of the constructor. So that means constructors are executed only once. Constructors are executed only once while an object is created. While an object is created. So what is the point here? It is, guys, constructors are executed only once while an object is created for that class. For that class. So that means if it is a method, if you go to the our classes, yeah. So if you, for example, assume this is a method, deposit amount is a method. So how many times I can call the methods from wherever you want? For example, check balance is a method. So I called method from the main method and as well as okay. So like that, you can call check balance method wherever you want. For example, if you see here also I can call the balance method. So wherever I want, I can call the check balance method. So wherever I want, I can call the check balance. I mean, not check balance method. The meaning is the methods wherever I want, I can call any number of times. So that means I can execute methods any number of times wherever I am calling. But when it comes to the constructors, what is the point I told you here? It is constructors are executed only once while an object is created for that class. So that means constructors are not, so I can write like this. We cannot call constructors externally whenever we want to whenever we want to execute. So that means constructors are executed when while object getting created. So constructors are automatically executed whenever an object is created. But as a Java developer, we cannot call constructors n number of times wherever we want. Like similar to methods. So what is the method? Method you are calling here, wherever you want. call a method, you can call without any limitations. So you can call same method, you can reuse this logic, you can call this method wherever you want, at any place, at any number of times. But when it comes to the constructors, you as a developer, we cannot call the constructors externally. So that means once you written a constructor, once we written a constructor inside our Java class, those are all executed while object is getting created automatically. But as a developer, externally we cannot call the constructors whenever we want. Point number one. So that means let's take until this. What is the point of constructor? How it is going to be created while object is created. And as per my statement, we cannot call constructors externally whenever we want to execute it. So let's write a simple constructor and try to understand based on the rules, and then we will move to the next 2 points. New project. At last, I will tell you what is the real importance of constructors. I mean, what is the logic, what kind of logic generally we will write inside the constructors. I will tell you when comparing with the methods. Okay, so let's write a simple Java class, public class. So let's take some good package names. When you are practicing, also don't miss these standards. Okay, fine. And let me write down some class here. Okay, I'll write like bank. Okay, fine. So now in this case, I'm defining the constructors. I'm writing the constructor. Okay, so what are the rules we discussed? Let's see here. So constructors should be always class name. So you can write constructors inside a Java class. So it should be always, if you want, I mean, I can write down those lines also. So whenever I said like similar to methods, the rules what applied for the methods, some of the rules is applicable for the constructors also. So that means even if you want, I can write one more point here. It is definition point of view. Constructors are defined always inside class and outside of methods. So that means constructors are defined as a individual blocks. It should not be inside the methods, and as well as it should be inside the class, but outside of the methods. So that is the point you have to remember. So that means outside of method means you can write any number of methods as part of your Java class. But the point here it is constructors are always outside of the methods but inside the class. So I'll define here. So what is my syntax for the constructor point of view? So we understood like access specifier we will use. So as of now, we know one access specifier public. We will discuss later access specifiers clearly. And when it comes to constructor name, the rule is what? For which class you are writing the constructor, in which class you are writing the constructor, that class name will become constructor. If you are not following that, what will happen also, we will see that. Now, that is one rule. Second rule is constructors don't have any return type. So similar to methods, for example, if you return non-static method also public, integer, something like print, check balance, whatever it is. So you are writing like this. What is the difference you observed from the method versus constructor point of view? So method is always have a return type. Whether it is a void or integer something, you have to always declare here. And when it comes to names, you can define whatever the name okay you want, you can give that name. But when it comes to the constructor, point number one, there is no returns. Second thing is class name should be constructor name. So then as it is, parenthesis, semicolon. Sorry, not semicolon. So I open curly braces like this. So that means I said constructor is a block of statements again. Constructor is having a logic. So that means open the constructor, close the constructor. Opening and ending. So in between this, you will write down the some logic. In between this, you will write down the logic. For example, what we can do is sys out of, I'm writing a logic like this. This is constructor. This is constructor of bank application. So I written only one line, system.out.println. This is constructor of application. Okay, fine. Now what I am doing, if you observe here, how to create object. So creation of object for the Java class. What is the formula? We know that. What is the rule? We know that creation of object means class name space object name. So that means bank name, bank application, object name equal to new class name. So this is the thing we know how to create the object by default. If you see here now, I'm executing the program. This is the logic we used to write every time when you are creating the object. Apart from that, I'm not done anything. Let's comment the object creation also. So see the first point number 1. It's I did not created any objects. I written only constructor. I written only constructor and I written a main method. So that's all. And if you see here, sys out of, this is main method. This is main method executing now. Some statements are written. I written a constructor and I have a method and I'm executing the logic. If you observe here, run as Java application. What you understand here it is, this is main method executing now. So that means inside this, as per our explanation earlier, JVM always starts from the main method. Fine. It will enter inside and it is checking how many lines of logic we are writing and we have written this and that is what printed here. But constructor is not executed. Now, how to execute the constructor means, I said one more point again. Behavior point of view, what it is? Constructors are executed only once while an object is created for that class. So at the same time, we can't call constructors externally whenever we want to execute it. So we cannot call the constructors externally whenever we want to execute, wherever we want, we cannot do that. But constructors are always executed when objects are getting created for that class. Now see what I am writing. Yeah. So let's see here. Creation of object. Please understand guys, very important. How I am creating the object? Class name followed by object name equal to new class name. Okay. So now if you are understanding this statement one more time, constructors are executed only while an object is created for the class. So what is going to happen in this case is just execute the program, then I'll explain you. Yeah, if you see here, what happened? This is main method executing now, and this is constructor of bank application. So that means the bank application, this constructor is executed. So what you written here? Constructor. So you written constructor. So the constructor is executed in this case. But what you did, you are not done anything. You just created an object. For the class, like class name, object name equal to new class name. But then automatically constructor is executed. If I am removing this line and execute the program one more time, see, only main method is executed, but not constructor is not executed. But whenever you are creating an object automatically, internally JVM is executing the constructor also. See, the constructor is executed. So that means in this case, what will happen? Please try to understand. Okay. So this is the logic we written. This is the logic we written, right? So now in this case, what's happening? I said whenever constructors are, whenever we are creating an object, creating object means whenever you are using the new operator, that is nothing but you are creating the object. For which class you are creating the object means for the same class, bank application. So whenever you created the object, what internally JVM will do? What internally JVM is going to do is understand the points. Immediately JVM will verify, is there any constructor, developer written any constructor or not? As a developer, they are written any constructors or not. It will looks for what, guys? While creating the object, what it is checking is internally creating the objects, internally it will checks any constructors existed or not. Only constructors. Any constructors existed or not. Yes. In this case, one constructor is we written as a developer. So immediately what it will do is it will go to the constructor and it will start executing the constructor. So starts if existed, but there are some other rules also. I'll come back. We'll see that. Internally. If existed, then JVM executes that constructor. JVM is executing that constructor. So in this way, what is happening? Whenever you created an object by using new operator, internally JVM is only calling the constructors and JVM executing the constructor. As a developer, you are not doing any extra things to call the constructor. Now, out of all this explanation, I will ask you one more question. What is my question here? It is question here. It is if I want to execute constructor one more time, if I want to execute constructor one more time, what we have to do? So from this program, whatever the program I written, so from this program, if I want to execute the constructor one more time, what we have to do? Can you tell me what I have to do now? So if I, with this one time constructor is executing, but I want to execute one more time also, what we have to do? If it is method, for example, assume you know that, right? Public void ABC method is there. You can call method. If you want to call for one time, you will call that method. You will call the method like this. If you want to call second time, you will call the method second time. If you want to call the method third time, you will call the method third time. So if you don't want to call that method, you will not call that method. So that is what the behavior of method. You can call your method any point of time, at any place, at any number of times. But now my question is, with this logic, we have seen one time constructor is already executed, but I want to execute constructor one more time. What I have to do? Yes. Need to create objects. Create object again. Yes, exactly same. So that is what I said. That is what we are understanding. A constructor is always executed internally only when object is created only once. So that means we created one object first time. That's why one time constructor is executed internally. Now if you want to execute the constructor one more time, you don't have any alternative like okay, like calling the methods point of view, I will call like this so that it will execute. No. So what you have to do is you have to create one more object. So let's create one more time object, bank application, app application 2 or object 2, something whatever it is, new bank application. So now what will happen again? Whenever JVM starts from the main method, comes here, this line will execute, and in the next line you are creating an object. So whenever you are creating an object, internally what JVM will do? So what JVM will do is, while creating an object, JVM verifies any constructor defined or not. Defined or not. If defined, that will be executed immediately. So there are again some subpoints are available. Some internal rules also available. We will see one by one, step by step. So if any constructor is defined, then that will be executed immediately. So based on this, what will happen here it is, immediately JVM, based on this first time you are creating the object, it will jump to the constructor and it will execute the constructor. So that means by the time one time constructor is executed, when this object is getting created, which object? Application app. Fine. Now it moved to the next line. So in this case, what you are doing? You are creating the object. So that means again same rule applicable. It is checking any constructor available. Yes, available. It will come here. So again, it will execute the entire constructor logic from opening to ending. It will execute everything. So that means by the time second object is created, application 2, so one more time constructor is executed. So whether it is true or not, see here. Run as Java application. See here, second time the constructor is executed. So what is the summary? What is the rule we have to understand here? It is constructors are executed when objects are created, but as a Java developer, you cannot call constructors externally whenever you want to execute without creation of object. So the question here it is again, is it possible to create, sorry, is it possible to execute a constructor without creating an object? Without creating an object? No. So answer is, so when objects are created, then only constructors will be executed. But it's not like you cannot call the constructors to execute that logic without creating the objects. It's not possible. Okay. So this is the basic nature of the constructor. This is the basic nature of the constructor. Okay. So now with this we are done with the constructor means? No, we are not done. We are having so many other so many other things also as part of the constructor. So what we understood from this is the basic nature of the constructor, how to implement the constructor. So point number, no void, no return type, class name should be method name. Sorry, constructor name should be always class name. If you return other than class name, for example, class name is bank application, but I return bank application something like logic, whatever it is. Now class name is different, constructor name is different. Then Java compiler is trying to understand this one as a method guys. So Java is understanding this one as a method. So that's why it is asking whether Java compiler is asking us, hey man, what is this? I don't see this name as a similar to class name. If it is similar to class name, then compiler will understand as a constructor because there is no return type. You are not given return type and you are not given proper class name. So that's why it is asking us, compiler, see, return type, what it is saying, you want to add a return to make it as a method or you want to change it as a constructor. So what, if it is a constructor, change the name to class name. If it is a method, add the void so that it will become as a method. So that is how compiler is going to get the confusion. So if you are adding void, then that will become method. If you don't want to, generally, just I am telling you. Now if you are giving class name, then that is becoming as a constructor. So these are all things, please practice and remember all these rules. Okay, point. Okay, now next point is Java divided constructors in two types. Constructor into two types. Java divided constructors into two types. The first one is called as default constructor. Understand, default constructor, or it will be called as zero parameter constructor. Zero param constructor. Param means parameters, guys, full form. Like similar to method parameters only. So that's why we've taken that. Now, second is, so if you see the syntax, I given something like zero or more constructor. Sorry, zero or more parameters. So I'm talking about zero parameters. Now the second time is parameterized constructor. So the second one will be called as parameterized constructor. So second one is going to be called as parameterized constructor. So that means if your constructor is having zero parameters, nothing but your constructor don't have any parameters, then you will call it as a default constructor. Now I written a constructor. So what is this constructor? Is it a default or parameterized? Is it a default or parameterized means? How will you recognize it? Default. How? There is no parameters we define. So that's why it is called as default constructor. Okay, fine. So let's see the some points about default constructor and then we'll go for the parameterized constructors. So total two types of constructors we have. We can define default constructors as well as we can define the parameterized constructors. So let's see the definition discussion about the parameterized constructor. Sorry, default constructor, and then we'll come back to the parameterized. Okay. When a constructor don't have any parameters defined, any construct that will be called as that will be called as default constructor or zero parameterized constructor. Default constructor of the class. So for example, this is okay. So this is the example. So how? Only zero parameter, no parameters defined. So that's why I can call it as a default constructor. Okay, cool. Now the next point is in a class. In a class, how many default constructors? How many default constructors we can define? How many default constructors we can define? So tell me one point here it is. Leave about this. I mean, just think with your common sense. When you are writing the methods, so when you are writing the methods as part of the class, okay, so some class, whatever it is, public class, some class, whatever it is. So what is the point you have to observe here? It is inside this class. Have you ever tried giving a method name same method signature 2 times. So I return a method M1 and I want to write method M1 one more time with same signature without any change in the signature level. I return M1 2 times. Is it possible or not? Any one of you tried when you're practicing the methods? Not possible. So that means with same method signature, you cannot write two methods. There is a concept of method overloading. Then you have to define some parameters. Okay, there should be a difference in the parameters level that is called as method overloading. Similarly, we have constructor overloading. We are coming to that point only. So that means with the same signature as it is signature, you cannot define two methods. So then what compiler will try to say is, hey man, you created duplicate methods, something like that. It will give the compile time error. So now in the same point of view, if you are thinking, in a class, how many default constructors we can define? How many default constructors we can define? So here, if I said more than one, for example, in case if your answer is greater than one, then that means what is our greater than ones means? Are we going to providing different constructors with different names? So for example, if I am asking same question with respect to methods, how many methods I can define? Leave about the method names. At a time, how many methods I can define in a class? How many methods I can define? I can say like n number of methods. So that means simply you method names wise you don't have any restriction. You don't have any restrictions like you can give M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6. Okay, check balance, withdraw amount, deposit amount, check employee details, deposit salary. So like that you can give the method names whatever you want. But when it comes to the constructors, what? You have a limitation, you have a restriction like you have to give the class name only. So by applying that formula, so if I cannot select greater than one. So that means providing different constructor with the different names is possible? No. Right? So that's why either 0, your answer should be either 0 or 1. Either 0 or 1. So 0 or 1. So that means you may not define the constructor, there is no issue. Or you can define only one default constructor. When you can say default constructor, when it is having 0 parameters, guys. Where constructor don't have any parameters. So and class name should be the constructor name. So that's why when you don't have 0 parameters, then you can define either 0 or 1. If you, as your requirement is not demanding anything, don't write any constructor. Or your requirement is demanding constructor, but you can write only one default constructor at a time. That means 0 parameterized constructor. So your answer should be either 0 or 1. So if you are trying to write one more time, so that means see here. What will happen in this case is, I said for example more than one. If it is more than one, as per rule what you have to remember always, default constructor 0 parameter, that is fine. But constructor name. Now whenever I said like it will create object, whenever you are creating object, right? App equal to new bank application. So if you are created an object, I said JVM immediately verifies if you are creating an object, any default constructor is created or not. As a developer, anything written up. Yes, this time we written not 1, 2. Then tell me JVM has to execute this one or this one. So confusion, ambiguity. So that's why you can define only one default constructor per class, not more than that. So if you added more than once, then you will get confusion, ambiguity issues. That's why Java is not allowing more than one. So you can may not write anything or maybe write only one thing, one default constructor. So the answer is either 0 or 1. So not even 1, 0 also. So if it is greater than 1, your answer, that is wrong. So that means you cannot provide constructor name. See, if constructor is away allowing different names, then you can write anything. But the rule is class name should be constructor name. You will have only one class name, means you have to only think. So that means the above thing is wrong. So you cannot define more than one. So what you will get in this case is you will get the compile time error. First of all, compiler itself will say like, hey man, you cannot define more than one. See here, I said 0. 0 means you are not defined any parameter. No compile time error. If you observe here, no compile time error, and you can execute the program also successfully. 0 parameters. Sorry, 0 constructors. Not written anything. Or else you can write at one default constructor. Okay, fine. Okay, but you created object 2 times. Don't say like this. I'm talking about how many constructors you are defining. Now, I'm adding one more constructor to the logic. In the next line, see here what's happening. Compiler is immediately scolding, hey man, what is this point? So see, duplicate constructor. Remove it. Please remove one of these. So that means it is trying to say is duplicate constructors. Similarly, when you are defining methods, also same thing you will get public. So that's why I told you very well. Please practice the concepts immediately, whatever you are learning on daily basis. Those things will help you to understand other concepts easily in future. So if I am returning again M1 one more time, see what is happening. Again you will get some problem. So what is duplicate method? Duplicate method. So if you given some difference with respect to parameters, the error will go away. I know that. So this will be called as method overloading. Similarly, same thing will come in the constructor now. It will be called as constructor overloading. So that is what called as second type called as parameterized constructor. So that we will come back. But as part of our question point of view, how many default constructors we can define as a for a class means only either 0 or 1. Either 0 or 1. Okay. So based on that, if you are defining one more time, duplicate. So that's why either 0 or 1. Okay, this is also cool. Now the next point is, so we are understanding the rules and regulations of defining the constructors. These are all most important interview questions when you are applying as a fresher point of view. These are all things they will ask you guys. They will test your knowledge. So fine. So you will get the compile time error. That is also okay. Now the next point is, understand this is also one of the important thing now what I am explaining. Now in a class, the point is, in a class as a developer, if we are not added any type of constructor, understand the point, if you are not added any type of constructor, then Java compiler will add a default constructor. Understand the point? A default constructor inside logic while generating .class file. But we cannot see that. Okay. So what is the point I would like to say here? It is, read the point guys, very important point. So what it is, in a class, in a Java class, as a Java developer, as a developer, if you are not added any type of constructor, so any type in the sense, either default or parameterized constructor, any type of, simply the point here it is, no constructor written by the developer, either whatever constructor it is, you are not written any constructor. That is what the point. Then Java compiler will add a default constructor inside logic while generating dot class file. So that means what is the point I'm trying to say here? It is how Java is designed is, now if I have a class, okay, sorry. Yeah. So now if I have a class, okay, and let's take class A, something, just whatever the name it is. Now assume inside this I written 10 methods. Inside this I written 10 methods. Now I have one more class called as B class. Class B, and inside this class I written a constructor B constructor, that means default constructor whatever it is, and I have some methods also. Assume I written five or six methods whatever it is, and I have one more Java class. See, I'm explaining this much slow in the sense definitely there is a real time importance is there for that concept, and that is going to be useful more and more in the upcoming your frameworks. In so many areas these things will be involved, so that's why I'll go slowly. If something I feel like it's not that much important with respect to real time and interview point of view, I'll move a little bit fast, so avoiding unnecessary things. Yeah, now I have a class C, and here I define a constructor called as C. Okay, and assume this is parameterized constructor. You don't know parameterized, simply you will give like method parameters only, like integer x comma y, something like that. So simply parameterized constructor. Okay, and then yeah, so these three types of classes I have. Now read this statement one more time and let's see what's happening in this case. As a developer, we written three Java classes, but a statement I given is in a class, a developer not added any type of constructor, then Java compiler is going to add a default constructor inside logic while generating the dot class. Compiler is internally going to add a default constructor with empty body or something. There is a concept available super and all that you will understand later. So simple understand. A Java compiler is going to add internally Java is going to add a default constructor while generating the dot class file. So that means in this case based on the rule, what it will do is whenever you are compiling the program, whenever we are doing the compilation, what is going to happen here it is, so Java will verify this class contains any constructor or not. As a developer, any constructor is being implemented or not implemented. So in this case, what is going to happen here it is, immediately Java, whenever it is creating, see this is are all .java classes, right? So internally Java will add a default constructor like this. Along with the logic, whatever you written, 10 methods or whatever it is. Now point number one, it is verifying any constructor being added or not. No constructor added, whether it is a default or parameterized, nothing is added. So then immediately what is going to happen here it is, internally an empty constructor is going to be added by the compiler. So this is how an empty constructor will be added here. So internally there is a concept called as super and all that we will understand later, but simply understand empty constructor. Who added? Compiler. So I mean Java point of view, when you are compiling, this is going to be added. So that means by the time your dot class is getting created, a dot class, so internally a.class file. So this is a.java, right? So generally we will write a.java. So now a.class. So who added? This is being added while compilation. Why it is added? Because no constructor being implemented as part of the class A. Now, if I am applying the same rule again with respect to this, in this case, compiler is going to add any constructor or not. Point number one. So in this case, constructor is going to add any constructor or not. So can you tell me? So what I said, if you are added any type, so it doesn't matter whether it is a default or parameterized. If you are added any constructor, then compiler, if you are not added, sorry, then compiler will add. If you are added anything, then compiler will not do anything. So in this case, what compiler will do is, compiler will verify this developers written any constructor or not. Yes, something is written with respect to constructor. So then what it will do is, it will not do anything. Simply it will compile the program as it is. So it will compile the program as it is. That's all. In this case, compiler is not going to take any action. So that means in this case, compiler is taking an action. So in this case, compiler adding, in this case, no. Why? The reason is already some constructor is defined. Already constructor is defined. No action. Because the reason is already existed. Already something is existed. That's all. So leave about whether it is a parameter or default. Okay, it doesn't matter. Now, similarly, when it comes to C class also, same thing. No action by the compiler. Why? Because something is existed already. Already some constructor is existed. So in this case, nothing is going to do. And same whatever the existed in the things, that will be compiled as it is and putting into the dot class file level. Putting into the dot class file level. So what is the point you are understanding here? It is as it, when you are not writing anything. So now in this case, I written something. Compiler is not going to do anything. In this case, I am not written anything. Then compiler is going to do anything. Add something. Now my next question is, why compiler is adding when we are not writing anything? Why compiler is adding? Because if you understand the scenario again here, how we are creating object a equal to new a, right? Now when you are understanding the methods concept, for example, assume you defined a method like this, method 1 and zero parameterized constructor, sorry, zero parameterized method, you written some logic. Okay, this is method guys, something void method, whatever it is. Now to call this method, how we are calling this method? So whenever you are calling this method, whether it is a static or non-static, how you are calling this method? Method one and you are ending parenthesis semicolon. So what? This is the way you are calling the method. So why in this case, what is the rule you followed? Method is having zero parameters. So that's why without passing any values, you are calling the method. You are calling the method. So then immediately what JVM will do? Based on this, JVM will observe, okay, zero parameters, method name is method 1. Then immediately JVM will jump here and enter inside this method and it will start executing the logic. So however you given empty parenthesis colon while you are calling the method, same point of view, if you don't have this logic, if you don't have this logic, if it is not added, then when you created an object, I said what point right now, constructors are executed always while creating the object. Now I created an object called as A for a small a, I mean for the class A. Now if you observe here, this right hand side part is representing the constructor calling. Constructor is representing constructor calling. So however as a Java developer you are calling the methods. Now when you are creating the object, right hand side, after new operator, whatever you written here, that is representing the constructor calling. For example, assume you have one more method add method you have, and you return integer x comma integer y. Okay, this is the logic you return, something like return x plus y, whatever it is, return x plus y. Something like this you return. So now how will you call this method generally? Whenever you are calling this method, you know the rule. What is that rule? Add. This is the way you will call? No. Add method is taking always two values, x comma y. So you will pass always two integer values like this. So that means why you are doing this? If you are not following this rule, what will happen? Compilation will fail. So if you are following as it is, then what will happen? Based on this, JVM will understand, okay, let's go to the add method, and as well as let's take a value as 10. 10 value is replaced into x position, 20 value is replaced into y position. So then the remaining logic, then it will enter inside the method and it will execute the logic. So this is all about method way of calling we understood. Now similarly what JVM is understanding, whenever you are creating an object by using new operator, immediately whatever you given after right side of new, okay, so it is considering this as a constructor calling. Now as a Java developer you are not added anything, as a Java developer. Now similarly compiler is also not added anything. Now compiler is also not added. Java as a developer you are also not added. Then how to call this constructor? How to create an object for this? Please understand this point I will carry forward to tomorrow also guys. So if you don't have either empty constructor or whatever it is, with this signature, if you observe the signature A like this. So if you observe this, this looks like a signature of calling the constructor. So if you don't have a constructor here, as a developer you are not added, as a compiler it is also not added, then there is no logic with this signature. Then how things will happen? I mean, how object is going to be created. So that's why what in this case constructor will do is, sorry, Java is going to do is, if a developer return any constructor, then it will not do anything. If developer not written anything, then internally what it will do is, it will take care of adding the default constructor. So now, in this case, earlier you don't have anything. So that's why an object creation for a class A is not possible. Because you are trying to create, but there is no block to execute this A parenthesis point of view. There is no logic, there is no block. So that's why you will get a problem. So that's why by default what Java is doing in this case is, it's not making mandatory to developer. It's saying like, hey man, when you're writing the Java classes, if you don't have if you are having a requirement of constructor, write on your own. If you don't have any constructor requirement, leave it. I'll take care internally object creation process and all. So like that, internally it is going to create it will take care of the constructor. So what I will do, now in this case, compiler is adding a constructor. That's why it is adding the default constructor like this with empty body, whatever it is. Now see, if you are creating object like this, what's happening? If you are observing this, A parenthesis. So that means now it is similar to method calling only. Like, but the point is constructor. When you are using the new operator, whenever you are creating an object, then constructors are executed. But the point is now, yes, something is there with respect to this signature. So then it is entering here. I mean, constructor is executed now, and if it is empty constructor, simply it will come out. Finally, your object is ready. Finally, your A object will be ready. But what is the point you understood? As a developer, you return or not return, constructor compiler is going to add. But the point here it is, for every object creation, for every object creation, for every object creation, ， . . 。 . 。 . 。 . . . . . . . . 。 . 。 . 。 . . . . . . . 。 。 . . . 。 . 。 。 . . . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . . 。 . . a constructor is always executed. So what is the rule you have to understand? What is the point you understood here? It is for every object creation, a constructor is always executed. A constructor is always executed. A constructor is always executed. So if you see here, yes, even though you are not added anything, compiler is added and that constructor is executed. But in the remaining two cases, what happened in this case? Instead of compiler, you written something on your own and you written your own logic. Then what compiler is going to do? Compiler is not done anything. Simply it is converted to b dot class. Why? It's already some constructor is there. Now whenever you are creating the b object, b equal to new b, what's happened? In this case, compiler is not added anything. Why? Because already there. So whatever is there, it is automatically keeping inside the dot class file level. So if you see here, as a developer, we return in the .java classes. So in Java, as a developer, we return something. But whatever thing it is, as a developer, we define constructor. That's all simple thing. Now, in this case, same thing will be copy pasted as it is and same thing will be called. So whenever you're calling this like this, what will happen? Yes, already to execute this to represent this behavior, to execute this, if you observe here, something is, it is there. So that's why it will be, in this case, this constructor will be called automatically. As a developer, whatever you return. See here, now I am writing the constructor. Earlier, I did not return anything. So internally compiler is added and executed, but we cannot see that. But if you see here, now I added. Now in this case, what will happen? Whenever you created object like this, immediately this time, it will go and execute the developer constructor. In this case, compiler will not add any default constructor into the dot class file. Why compiler will not add? Again, one more rule. What is that rule? In a class, how many constructors you can add? Default constructors, maximum only one. Either 0 means as a developer you are not written anything, or as a developer we can write only one. If you are not written anything, 0, then internally compiler will add. If you are added 1, then compiler will not add. But ultimately, the class will maintain always only one default constructor. As a developer, you are added or not, that doesn't added or not, okay, any constructor, but one default constructor is going to be maintained. But if your class is having at least one parameterized constructor, so what is going to happen? What is the story and all? I'll discuss tomorrow. We are not done that. That's what I told you. So with respect to default constructor point of view, we are discussing. Now, for example, your class is having parameterized constructor, no default constructor. Then how objects are going to be created? What are the rules you have to follow? So I said when there is some constructor is existed, compiler will not add any constructor. But you are having only parameterized constructor. But in this case, can we create object like this? Means it's not possible. C equal to new C I written like this. So in this case, object of C is going to be created means not created. In this case, object of C is created means this line will not created. I mean, you'll get the compile time error. Why? I'll tell you what and all reason. Simply, I'll ask you this question. For example, I already written like this. So assume you written an integer add method like this. You are calling this, then this add method will execute. Now, for example, assume I'm calling add method like this. Add 10, add 10 comma 20 comma 30, add 66.77 dot 88, add 0 comma 0. So now tell me, I'm calling the above add method, add integer x comma y point of view. Out of all these things, which is a valid one, which is a invalid one? Which is a valid one, which is a invalid one? comparing with this method signature, this is a valid, first one is a valid, invalid, invalid one. Why? It is always expecting two parameters, integer comma integer, but you are passing zero values. So that's why invalid. It is always expecting two, but you are passing only one. Okay, invalid. So it is always expecting two, but you are passing three. So invalid one. Compiler will give you a message. Okay. It is always expecting two values. Okay, you are passing two, but it is always expecting integer comma integer, but you pass a double comma integer. Two only, but different data type. So now when it comes to second, yes, integer 0 comma 0, yes, this is a valid one. So that means, however, the rules applicable for a method point of view, when you define method parameters, same thing point of view. Tomorrow, once we define the constructor parameter, parameterized constructor, then, okay, so same rules applicable here also. So if you want to call a parameterized constructor, simply what you will do is, you will call, you will create an object like this, C, and followed by values 10 comma 20, something like that. The number of parameters whatever you defined here, for those parameters you will pass the argument values. Simply I can call it as argument values. So then, yes, your constructor will be executed. So that means an object will be created and your constructor will be executed. That I will explain clearly tomorrow. Parameterized constructor I will explain tomorrow. Today we completed only default constructor point of view. So if you are not added any constructor, so don't think like, sorry, here no default constructor is added. So the observation here it is, no default constructor as a developer not written. That means compiler will not add. Compiler is going to add. No, my rule is very clear. I mean, Java rule is very clear. As a developer, not add written any type of constructor, then only it will. If you written at least something, then Java will not, compiler will not add any constructor. So whether you added parameter or okay, non-parameter one, it doesn't matter to the compiler. Something you added, it will not touch the anything. If you are not added any constructor, then only it will add only default constructor. So that is how Java is designed. That is how things are happening. Why, the question is why compiler is adding means, if that is not there, if it is not there, how to create object then? So the how to execute this block a parenthesis. There is nothing logic related to a parenthesis. So that's why compiler is saying like, okay, I will add internally so that whenever you created a object like this a parenthesis, then JVM will execute this logic internally. Okay, so that's what guys, it is very similar to methods only, but methods wise you are having customization. Method names you can call any point of time wherever you want. Okay, wherever you want you can call the methods. You can have, you're having a customization, you can call methods any point of time. Okay, like that. But constructors are having some limitations. Why it is, why and what purpose you have to write constructors, in which scenarios you have to write and all. Once we are done with the parameterized constructor, then we will discuss all the details. So that means tomorrow, by tomorrow we'll done with the constructors. So because you understood the overall view of constructor, rules and regulations of the constructor, tomorrow straightforwardly we will start understanding the parameterized constructor. So simple guys, if you return a constructor with parameters like similar to method parameters, then we will call it as a parameterized constructor. But there are some rules and regulations available again, some internal details available. Those are also we'll discuss in tomorrow's session. That most important point, concept, constructors are. Okay. So let's connect tomorrow with parameterized constructor. What you have to do is today, please remember all these points. Please practice all these points. Write more than one constructor and compile the program and see what error compiler is giving. Note down those errors. Okay. Make some few things and make some experiments and understand the concept. So default constructors is completed today. Tomorrow we'll see parameterized constructor and overall what are the rules and regulations we have to follow. Summary also we'll discuss in tomorrow's session, and what kind of logic we have to write. Method versus constructor point of view. In method what logic we'll write, in constructor what logic we'll write in real-time applications. I'll explain tomorrow. So any doubts if you are having, please let me know.